thank you for coming early. Grab your seat, grab your beverage. Like Story Night June is about to happen. stories. I was gonna shout out to CJ West, the owner, magnificent creator of Spokesman. He just popped over. But thanks to CJ and our lovely bartenders here. Here's another to your bartenders. So thank you again for coming. As you may already know, we have a local bike nonprofit. We have 4 short stories, bike stories. We have an intermission, and we have a short bike film. We're going to show a little bit of it. Thanks to CJ, there he is. Just to give you an idea. So we'll have our local bike nonprofit, 2 short bike stories, and then intermission, so that y'all can mix and mingle a little bit. And just FYI, Spokesman closes at 10, so you don't have to go home. You can't stay here. Just a heads up on that. But also, if you don't know already, if you didn't watch the previous live stream, Bike Story Night came to me last year more so, and it just, really, really sat with me, and I sat with it during COVID, and I wanted to just create this opportunity to share, I guess, bike stories. I love talking to people and bringing people together, so here we all are to shorten it up a little bit. So thank you again for coming and supporting this creative idea of mine. Also, again, you can watch the live stream anytime on our YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram, Bike Story Night. That's pretty much my spiel. Now I'm gonna invite Marion Martin from Texas Mamma Jamma.
Safe side. I tend to walk around a little bit. Hey, well, this is great. Thank you, Valerie. Thank you, Bike Story Night, for the chance to be the bike nonprofit tonight. I'm with Texas Mamma Jamma Ride. I'm really excited to tell you about our ride. And I'm going to weave in a little bit of a personal story, because my story and the story of Texas Mamma Jamma Ride, hard to break those two apart. So I discovered Texas Mamma Jamma Ride in 2013, and I was just finishing up treatment for my second diagnosis with breast cancer. So I was a little bit puffy, I was very bald, I was really out of shape. Chemo and radiation definitely takes a toll. Maybe killing some things, but it ruins your fitness, that is for sure. So I was looking to kind of get myself back, and I saw a poster for Texas Mamma Jamma Ride, and it was like, well, I mean, clearly it's a catchy name, right? That's fun. We've got a fun logo, and I thought, yeah, this is breast cancer thing. That's my jam right now, and this looks really good. The only problem was it's a bike ride, and I had a little bit of childhood trauma related to a bike incident on my Blue Swin. As a kid, coming down, I lived in Marion County on a hill, steep driveway, lost control, went flying down the hill, hit the Webb's Knights, their light pole. But the trauma was not so much that, all that happened, but then I got in trouble for it for some reason. I got in a lot of trouble for hitting the Webb's light pole, had to pay for the repairs out of my own allowance. I mean, it was just, so anyway, the bike thing was just not for me. So fast forward many, many years, I'm thinking, I've beaten breast cancer twice now. I think it's definitely time for me to take on this bike trauma. So I signed up for Texas Mamma Jamma Ride and bought a bike on Craigslist, headed to the Beltway, got up to 6 miles an hour. Yeah, and this is, if I had 2 hands, I'd show you with both, but this would be a reenactment of my grip on the handlebars. And but you know what, I'm a fighter, I'm fierce, I'm a warrior, beaten breast cancer twice, this bike thing. So kept after it. First Mamma Jamma Ride in September of 2013, I did 25 miles. And it was the best day ever. And so I was totally hooked. The next year I trained up, I did 48 miles. A couple years later, here I am. Well, a couple years later, I started running the bike ride, left a very secure, kind of traditional employment, and did this bike ride because I am Mamma Jamma. We are fighters, we are fierce, we are warriors, we're badasses, and we're beating this thing. community. I found the people that, you know, wanted to address this issue of breast cancer the same way I did. Breast cancer is not going to be, you know, when they tell a movie, when my movie is run of my life, it's not going to end with breast cancer. That is not how the story ends. And that's the way we are. That's the way we roll at Mamma Jamma. So, yeah, so fighters, survivors. So Texas Mamma Jamma ride. So we're an annual bike ride. This year will be our 13th year. We raise funds to support breast cancer support services. So we raise funds so that people can survive this thing. The truth of it is, and the bottom line is that 1 in 8 women are going to be diagnosed with breast cancer. They're going to hear the words, you have breast cancer. 1 in 8. The other thing is that breast cancer is completely survivable if detected early. Stage 1 breast cancer, you have a 99% chance of survival. I'm a stage 1, 2 stage 1s. 99%. I got a pretty darn, I like this thing, right? Pretty near. Stage 4, that reduces to 27%. And the thing is, there doesn't need to be any 27s. There doesn't need to be any stage 4s because everybody needs to have a chance at early detection, and that's through mammograms. So the money we raise through Texas Mamma Jamma Ride supports the Big Pink Bus. And the Big Pink Bus rolls through Central Texas providing mobile mammograms to people that don't have access, don't have money, and don't have insurance. You're never going to see the bus over in Westlake. The bus is only for people that don't have access. And because we're fighters and warriors at Mamma Jamma, we're giving those folks the chance to find out that they've got that. I start to apologize for profanity. I just want to use the F word a lot. Anyway. We're giving everyone a fighting chance to find those stage 1s, to have the 99% survival. No one should not have access. So that's what Mamma Jamma is all about. Saturday, September 18th, 2021 in Taylor, Texas. We offer routes of 15, 25, 50, and 70 miles. I can guarantee you a first-class cycling experience. And I can guarantee some pretty cool small-town fun in Taylor, Texas. Everyone is welcome. That's the other thing. We may be a bunch of badass fighters and survivors, but we come in all shapes and sizes. We come in all skill levels, and we don't really care. What unites us is that we want everyone to beat this thing. And we're doing something hard, and we're doing it. So I've got a table back there with some information. Mamma Jamma Ride on all social channels. I'm Marion, M-A-R-I-O-N, at mammajammaride.org. Going to hang out and listen to all these great stories tonight. Just really proud to be able to tell you about Mamma Jamma. And if you've got a fighting spirit similar to me and those of us in the Mamma Jamma tribe, join us. I think you'll like our group. So thank you so much.
Step up to the stage also. So yeah, Marion and Texas Mamma Jamma also are on all of the socials, so you can follow them and find all the details there, those handy dandy social medias. Yeah. And once again, thank you all for applauding. It's super nerve-wracking to be up here, so all of the love and shout-outs and woos are much appreciated. So thank you again for that. All right. Next, we have our first storyteller, Jessica Alexander, who's hot off a bikepacking website or podcast. Jessica, come on up. Awesome. So y'all get cozy. Please get your bevies. It looks like everyone's kind of got a seat. Thank you again for coming. Jessica, take it away.
Hi everybody, how are y'all tonight?
Good!
Friday. Thanks for spending it with us. So I'm here today to talk about my ventures in bikepacking. For those of you that don't know what bikepacking is, essentially you load up all your belongings on your bike and you go on an adventure. And that's kind of how I've spent the the last 5 years of my life. Being based here in Austin, I'm a full-time photographer and content creator, and then I just kind of have really spent a lot of time bike racing and then also bike pack adventuring. And so I'm very lucky that I get to do what I love for a living. I'm also a writer, and so I've been writing for Bicycling magazine about my adventures. Texas Parks and Wildlife just did a feature article on me that's in the June 2021 issue. So if you're a subscriber, or if you look online, you can see some pictures from my adventures, and we'll get a map up soon of the route that I did, where I rode 700 miles from Little Rock, Arkansas to Austin in late August. So I mean, probably the hardest time of year to do something like that, but also so fulfilling and just such a life-changing event for me. But today we are going to talk about my adventures that I did in January of this year, where I convinced 4 of my closest girlfriends to go on a bikepacking adventure, and they had no experience. So if you can imagine, this could be good or bad, but I really think the point of the story is just to kind of, you know, maybe dig into my brain a little bit and maybe inspire you to do an adventure that might be out of your comfort zone. You never know what's that outcome is going to be, whether you finish it or you don't. So this piece that I'll be reading from it's published in the 2021 issue of Bikepacking Journal. So there is a website called bikepacking.com, shout out, that they have stories that you can write about your adventures, and you can do route submissions, and they actually have a print publication. And so if you're interested in that, I can talk to you more about it afterwards, but they definitely have printed the story, and I also did photo accompaniment from my cohort in crime here, who I'll be speaking about, Andy. So, ask your closest girlfriends if they're up for a grand bike adventure. A little closer. Okay, sorry. Ask your closest girlfriends if they're up for an adventure. With that small seed of encouragement from fellow photographer Andy on a sunny and rather warm October afternoon at the Meteor here in Austin, I knew I was going to be tasked with a challenge. I'd never quite experienced in my adult life something like this. I knew that the Red River Ramble, as part of the Big Bend National Park, would be an amazing bikepacking experience to share with a group of friends. Well, you know, it's beautiful out there, Andy said. I had indeed just returned from a week-long trip out in West Texas myself, and I had done a few day rides out there in West Texas. I'd completed a pretty epic 50-mile loop on the northern edge of the park through a majority of paved roads. There were a couple of gravel roads that were a little bit rough, and you know, I remember thinking I was riding on a 38mm tire that was kind of smooth, and I'm like, I don't know if this is something that would be doable on anything other than a mountain bike. We'll come back to that. So I decided that, you know, hey, it was a great experience, and it really didn't really tax me to think about it. As soon as he asked, he was like, hey, let's do it. And so I immediately nodded my head, and I pinned the dates in to make this trip happen the first week of January. And we knew the weather was going to be pretty predictable, so. But honestly, the real decision for me was going to be who I was going to ride on this trip. I have a pretty extensive group of bikepacking friends pretty much throughout the United States now, and I've been bikepacking frequently, as I just mentioned. I did a 700-mile trip last year during the pandemic, and then I also did a 242-mile trip in Northwest Arkansas in October. So I'm pretty big into these longer bikepacking trips. But with the pandemic still looming and the vaccine availability just still a few months away, I knew that the best decision I could make regarding traveling to the remoteness of West Texas would be to invite my closest riding pod members. And, you know, never mind that they had very limited bikepacking experience. Caitlin, a rather new but extremely strong, capable rider, was more excited to really get into bikepacking. She had just completed her solo 260-mile overnight trip for her first forte into bikepacking, and it was an immediate yes to join in on the adventure. Veronica, another strong rider friend of mine, had opted to bikepack with me to Holland, Texas, where I'd be photographing a race the next day and she would be racing it. I kind of find that anybody that wants to commute 77 miles on their bike to go to work or to do a bike race is kind of my people, so she was an immediate yes as well. Deanna, my third invite, who's a rider I didn't know very well, but she's also sponsored by the SBT Gravel Ride for Racial Justice program that I'm a part of, that I'll be racing with this summer. She had been accepted onto the team, and she was actually interested in racing the 142-mile rendition of the SBT gravel race in August in Steamboat. And so she was like, absolutely, this sounds like a great time, right up my alley. And then finally, I had invited Vanessa, who tentatively accepted my invite and was hesitant because she knew she would probably be the weakest rider. But she was also very willing to jump into the challenge and get out there and try something and have a weekend that we might not ever forget. So with the cast members of 6 of us in place, I knew that I just needed to find the inner confidence to repair and then lead my friends through this bike adventure. And eventually, hopefully, they would remember it for the rest of their life for good reasons. Andy, a self-proclaimed pretend raconteur, would also assist as my tour guide. And luckily, with it being October, everyone would have 3 months to acquire all the gear they needed to average about 40 miles a day on some pretty challenging gravel and jeep trails through the remoteness of the Big Bend National Park. And I also made a point of acquiring sponsors. I have a couple personal sponsors, Specialized Bikes, Meteor Cafe, POC Sports, giving them shout outs because they are very supportive of BIPOC riders and people that are doing adventures and wanting to get out there and do cool things. So very appreciative for those folks being here. Win Republic, my clothing sponsor, for sponsoring a lot of my racing this year as well. But I made a point of reaching out to them and saying I'd like to put this adventure together and make sure that my friends can attend this trip at no cost, because I believe that's the future of why we do adventures and why we invite people to get into those adventures, is the low cost barrier and that low entry, whether it's learning the skills or just being able to share it at as much of a low cost as possible. So, being the logistical planner that I am, I spent hours planning the campsites and making packing lists, and I could feel the excitement growing with every day. Of course, as the trip neared, small issues came up. Who actually wants to drive the 8 hours? Not me. Do we think that 38mm tires are going to be adequate for these Jeep roads? Andy, of course, assured us everything was going to be fine, but we were at Meteor for our last trip check-in, and I felt nervous, honestly. As it turns out, we were all going to do it on 38mm tires. Nobody was bringing a mountain bike. I couldn't even fit a wider tire really on my bike anyways. And so I had that all too familiar fear of failure creep into my head, and at that exact moment I felt like maybe I wasn't going to be prepared and have these women prepared for the trip as they should be. Maybe our bikes wouldn't be able to handle it. Maybe I couldn't handle it. Dread. Trip day finally arrived, and having barely slept the night before, I felt uneasy. I pushed forward with a smile as we loaded our gear and bikes and made last-minute adjustments at Meteor. Of course, it was raining. Rain steadily pattered against the bike shop window, and I said a quick prayer, hoping it wasn't an omen or sign of what was to come. I knew the rain game all too well for my last bikepacking trip in Arkansas. Long shivers traveled down my spine, and I quickly shook off the chilly vibes that had entered my psyche. Besides, it doesn't really rain much in the desert. Is that what I've heard? So we had planned a full day to get out there and get to the Panther Junction headquarters, where we'd be bedding down nearby for the night. And luckily, Andy had already gone out and he procured our backcountry permits, as well as confirmed our campsites that we'd be using. I am seriously forever grateful to Andy for doing this for us. Andy's one of the most amazing humans in this world, and I'm beyond this world with this person. And it was great for him to take that stress off me, somebody to kind of have my back and to kind of take over as troop leader, as it will, for the trip. So on the morning of day one, after a couple of late night beers and chatter at Andy's Sprinter van / home conversion the night before, and I didn't really sleep much because I had like a leak in my air mattress, which I guess those things just happen. All the planning in the world doesn't predict that kind of thing. I realized it was 13 degrees outside, which that's pretty cold, as we all know, here in Texas. But it was all forgotten the moment I unzipped my tent and my eyes adjusted to the incredible sight in front of me. We had literally just slept on the banks of the Rio Grande. A delicate light frost completely covered my bike and gear. A calming, thick fog lingered over the peaceful river water and onwards towards Mexico, which was merely 300 yards away. I literally gasped with how spectacular the sight was, and in that exact moment in time, this was forever going to be one of the most incredible feelings of my life. So that chill in the air quickly met the anticipation of our grand adventures after many cups of strong coffee on our mini camp stoves. And we were all ready to finally begin after triple checking our gear and getting on our bikes. Although we had started a little bit later than we had wanted to, Andy assured us that we'd be excited to have the wind at our back, as well as the crisp air and the clear skies. I felt as though I wasn't going to completely relax though, and I just really wanted to get to the campsite on that first night and, at that point I threw out, hey, we're here, we're doing it, I might as well try and enjoy this adventure. So the day was long, and we were all very quickly discovering that our gear would constantly need to be tightened down, and the roads were just rougher than what I had predicted, especially given that we were all riding on loaded down bikes that ranged in weight anywhere from 30 to 45 pounds. So I didn't think we even averaged 10 miles an hour. So I feel that, when you hit 6 and you're proud of that, when I hit 10, I was like, you know what, now we're going somewhere. We just stopped so much, honestly. And then as I did the calculations in my head, I realized that we were going to get into the campsite way late into the night. Our spirits kind of immediately lowered as I announced this reality to the group. I guess you can say I wasn't off to a good start in keeping the morale of our troops high. But with my pride still intact and my legs feeling fresh, we pressed on. At this point, I had opted to ride in the back with Vanessa, who knew she'd have a hard time with the difficult roads that we rode on. I struggled to find ways to encourage her without making her feel like I was giving her too much positive messaging. My ego felt bruised slightly, and I realized that, maybe I should have opted to suffer on this trip alone. And then, of course, self-loathing, there were a few crashes and slide-outs, and a praise to surface for making great, bright lights. We finally made it to our campsite, and we fell asleep after a quick dinner and a rush to get our tent set up so we can get a good night's rest. On that second day, we had just as many challenges as the first day, as you could probably imagine, and we also were low on water. So we had to make an option to do a shorter day so we could get some water from Rio Grande Village, which was 10 miles away. We'd opted to send our stronger riders out a course in front of us to make up some time. So the fact that we were able to be flexible in changing our plans on the fly meant there was no need to double back on our riding, and we would cut our 40-mile a day to a mere 20 miles. I think everybody smiled at that moment, at least that's the energy that I felt in the group. Well, as luck as would have it, we had a neighbor that was camping in an RV nearby, and she was leaving and had plenty of water to share, and due to his generosity, we were actually able to make our day even easier and had plenty of water to tide us over for the next 24 hours. I breathed a welcome sigh of relief, knowing that with a lot of rest, the spirit of our group would remain high. And getting to the campsite earlier that day meant we had time to reflect on our travels. We took the afternoon to lay in the sun, cook a few meals together, and even did light painting as our activity for the evening. I actually felt myself starting to unwind and actually enjoy the trip. Actually enjoy it. I felt laughter from everybody and heard the joy in the group, and we just relaxed under the stars and did the camping thing, vibed out on the beauty of West Texas. So on day 3 of a 4-day trip, we decided that it was time to get going, so we got up as early as we could, and knowing we had a 40-mile route jaunt still in front of us, it was going to be a long day. A combination of more challenging jeep trails as well as regular car roads, and a pretty strong and consistent headwind laid ahead of us. At 3 p.m., we rolled into the park headquarters, and I could see the look of pure exhaustion on everyone's faces, and defeat, honestly. I also knew there was still another 20 miles of off-road riding that we still had to do with a limitation of about 2 hours of daylight left. So I definitely knew we were going to be riding in the dark for at least 2 more hours. Wasn't feeling great about that. But in sticking with the theme of flexibility, as we downed our much-needed snacks and dehydrating beverages and attempted to stay warm, while sitting on the curb outside in the parking lot, some rumblings began to emerge from the group. As tired as we felt, and the fact that we were only with 2 hours of daylight left meant that there was a decision that had to be made to change the course of the day, and ultimately, the trip. I begrudgingly listened to the conversations around me, instantly feeling an utter failure, like actually hit me in the face, like a physical slap. The kind of despair entered my belly, and I knew it wasn't from the microwave sandwich I had just eaten. I felt like I failed my friends at that moment. I instantly felt the negative emotions that I had tucked in the back of my head before the trip start to rear their ugly heads into my line of sight. I shook my head as if to say no and think of something, anything positive to say in that moment. What would be wrong with not finishing this trip? What if I think we failed? Probably most important of all, would my friends hate me? But on the other hand, we had cars that were parked only 20 miles away down a swift downhill road ride, and that nice tailwind mean we would be pedaling back much either. So as soon as I could blink away the tears that were starting to form in my eyes, Andy had blurted out to the group, "What are your thoughts on ending the bikepacking trip a day early?" It took me a long time to raise my chin and reopen my eyes and register to my brain what he had just said. I was worried that everyone would instantly see disappointment on my face. I breathed heavily through my nose and felt as though all eyes were on me, much like right now. But to my surprise, the vibe and the energy of the group, much as right now, had switched from defeat to an incredible feeling of yes. As I met people's gazes, the astonishing positivity of the group filled my soul, and I instantly was filled with love and hope. Everyone seemed to be in agreement that this might be the best thing to do. And we wanted to maintain our sanity, and we wanted to leave this trip on a positive note. And the reality is this, I think, from this trip. There's always the possibility to come back and finish what you start. And, to tackle a challenge like this is not for the faint of heart. So as we rode those last 20 miles back into the cars and the weather began to dip into the 40s, I was thankful that we were sharing that sense of resolution and success with the trip amongst our friends. I reflected over the wide range of emotions that I had experienced in such a short amount of time. Although we had not actually completed our 168-mile journey, I had found an inner confidence to lead my friends, despite my conference waving when I was tired. I convinced a beautiful pod of young, strong women to trust me to give them an opportunity to see Big Bend National Park and the world in general in a way they would have never considered before. And most important of all, I learned never underestimate the power of strong Texas women, and we should never be taken for granted or questioned. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Oh my gosh. Cheers to knowing your friends and your worth, your power. Go women of Texas, yes. I'm gonna welcome Hector up to the stage. If you don't mind coming up here, it's a little bit better vantage point for the camera. Hector Gonzalez, everybody. I'm super excited for Hector's story. He's going to start in Mexico, go to California, and then here in the lovely Austin, Texas. You ready?
Yeah.
Yeah? All right.
Oh, Hector!
Well, thank you, Valerie. Thank you, everyone, for coming over, and thank you for CJ for having us over. First, humor me a little bit. This is a little bit of a demographic question because that depends also how many explanatory comments do I need to add to this story. So first, raise your hand if you are under 25. No, nobody under 25? Okay. From 25 to 32 and a half years old. Okay. From 32 and a half years old to 45. Okay. And from 45 and over. That doesn't mean that your life is over. I'm just tired of it. Okay. So, it starts with, I was not a big fan of bike as a child. Actually, I was a big fan of motorcycles. And I have to blame TV for that. Now, here's the explanatory comment. Why? There was this show on TV called Chips. And let me share what Chips it's about in case you missed it, because it was an experience. It didn't age well, honestly. Chips is an American crime drama television series that originally aired in NBC from 1977 to 1983. It follows the lives of two motorcycle officers of the California Highway Patrol, CHP, starring Eric Estrada as macho, rambunctious officer Frank Poncharello, and Larry Wilcox as his straight-laced partner, Officer John Andrew Baker. Over-the-top freeway pileups were a signature of the show. For filming, traffic on the Los Angeles freeways was non-existent, and most chase scenes were done on back roads. So that's pretty much what you need to know. When you grow up in Mexico, you don't see a lot of brown people on TV. There was Ricardo Montalban, but he was just kind of like, not doing a lot of things. But you saw someone on a motorcycle just going and saving people, being a hero. He becomes your hero. and I wanted to have a motorcycle. As a 10-year-old, nobody buys you a motorcycle on their right mind. So the next best thing that I did, putting a small plastic bottle on the back of the bike, hitting the wheel, and making it sound like it was a motorcycle. And that was good enough, honestly, for a long time. And then time passes and everything. Eric Estrada continued his life. He wanted to do telenovelas in Mexico, very successful. And then I started just doing different kind of jobs. I managed to sneak into a job where, imagine this concept. We were delivering movies at home, VHSs. You selected, you called it over the phone, we take you the movie, and that's it. That was the business. I initially was not working delivering, I was working at the warehouse, helping fulfill the orders. And occasionally I just managed to sneak by and just go out on a bike ride, on a motorcycle ride, just to deliver things. And that rush ended until we had a series of deaths at the job. Kids that they were riding the motorcycle without the helmet, and yeah, they had very gruesome deaths. And at that moment, my love for motorcycles kind of disappeared. I have to say, my taste changed gears. And then there were different other things happening. There was a moment when I also was in a very bad car accident and started to use these light cars all around. Not on the part of saying they need to be completely out of the road, but I put very lots of thoughts about what kind of space we were giving the cars instead of giving it to other forms of transportation. And then happened that I came to the United States. I moved to Santa Ana, California, the part of Orange County that Orange County doesn't like to admit that it exists. And the only thing that I had to move around, I started working at the grocery store. I had just a bike. And on the bike, I started just to enjoy going on different kind of rides. Initially, it was just one small bike that was left on my grandmother's shed, and I just tried to fix it a little bit. Then one of my aunts, my Aunt Margie, she saw that, okay, that's not a good bike for you. Let me buy you a bike that you will enjoy. Foolishly enough, I ended up buying one of these, one brand that is called PHAT, P-H-A-T, pretty high and tempting. If you know what type of bike it is, remind me, which are the bikes that you see usually by the beach? A beach cruiser, exactly. So I had one of those. Not great to just go everywhere, but it was very enjoyable to have it. And that was the one that I used to pretty much go everywhere when I was there. And I have to admit, the first time that I managed to go to a beach on that bike, I took this long road that it was very dire at the moment. And then when you start seeing the sea, it's all worth it, because all the sweat, all the tiredness, all the expectation that you have completely delivers. It's one of my favorite memories of living in California. Having the possibility of a 30 or 45-minute ride, and you get welcome to the breeze, the smell of the sea. That was fantastic for me. And then there was another change. I met someone online and ended up moving to Austin. And for some time, I also got a bike over here. We managed to find a $50 bike from Craigslist. And I don't think that we can find that these days. But it was one of the things that helped me just go everywhere that I was working over here. And sadly, that relationship didn't work out. And I have to admit, there were moments when it was very hard for me. There was a lot of depression at that moment, even suicidal ideation. But I found ways to pretty much come out of that. And biking was part that helped me on that. I found out that in general, especially with life, you don't have to stay with on one gear. You can switch gears at any moment and do whatever at that moment you want to find out and try different things. You don't need to stay on one lane either. You can just travel around and try different things that hopefully one of them will satisfy you for a period of time and you will enjoy that. And one thing that I want to also mention, I came to some of the realizations thanks to therapy and friends and a lot of big community that said, we got your back. But the one memory that stayed with me from a time in California, I was returning one of those times. It was late, it was about, I think maybe almost midnight. And I'm just almost back to my apartment. And I see this guy just waving to me. I see a car, it's a black car, it's hard to see, even with my lights. He's waving and I'm like, okay, what's happening? He says, hey, can you help me out? I see that he's pulling cables from the car and he looks very, I don't know, he looks kind of angry, impatient. And I said, sure, what do you need? Hey, brother, where is the 405? And I said, oh, the 405? It's over here. It was just very visible. Oh, okay. And I just started looking at him and I'm like, he looks familiar. And I asked him, I'm sorry, sir, are you famous? And he says, oh, I used to be. And then I says like, oh my God, it's Eric Estrada. And I'm just like, wow. I was completely starstruck. I didn't say anything. I was completely like, oh, okay, so I told him, just take the U-turn, come over here, and then that's how you go to the 405. Oh, thank you, brother. That's it. And bike my way on. And the thing that I come back to that situation, that small memory, it's 3 things that Eric Estrada, as a hero of mine, it was a teachable moment. First, when you're lost, there is a moment when you need to hear everything inside your sideboard and trying to figure it out what to do. Second, ask for help. Ask for help of someone around you, and some of them will be able to assist you. And if at the moment you were famous or important, it never matters, honestly. It's just a second. And if you can do that and see that there are people around that wants to be a community and help you, what's better than that? And just keep changing gears until you find something that feels delicious, okay? Thank you.
Really cool slogans. Just keep changing gears, and now we're getting somewhere. I think Jess said earlier. Yes. Oh my gosh, we might have to put that up here next time.
It has to feel delicious.
Wait, what was it?
That has to feel delicious.
That has to feel.
Just keep changing gears until you find something that feels delicious.
Ooh.
Or find something delicious.
Yeah. Hector would. Thank you so much, Hector. All right, y'all, I'm going to introduce you to the amazing CJ West here, and then we're going to have a little intermission, but CJ's going to tell you all about that, so stick around.
Hello, everybody. How are y'all doing? My name is Christopher Jordan West. I go by CJ West. Welcome to Spokesman. So happy to have y'all here. This is actually the first event that we've had since March 16th of 2020. So that's cool. We won't even get into all that fun stuff we did the last year and a half. But It's an absolute pleasure to see you guys here, and everybody, just thank you so much for the support. Thanks for taking time out of your busy days to come and see us, hear these awesome stories, the speakers, Jessica, Hector, killer stories, awesome taglines, everything very, very cool. I'm a big time cyclist. I've been riding bikes since I was like probably 3, I don't even know. And it's just always been part of who I am. And anything that I do, I try and incorporate things that are very true to myself. You know, Spokesman itself, this is not a shtick, this is not a concept, this is not something I wanted to do different. If you've ever had the unique opportunity to come over to my house and chill in my garage, it looks exactly like this. Even down to the sparklies that are behind me. So when we built this place, it was really important for us to make sure we integrated as much as of ourselves into this. And the first thing I thought was like, where's the bike parking? And everybody looked at me like I was crazy. And I was like, well, if you guys aren't gonna have bike parking, like we will have bike parking. So we have some really cool neighbors, and one of them is a metal fabricator just on the other side of the yard. They're called Drop House. If you have an opportunity to follow them on Instagram, the stuff that they do is wonderful. They're extremely talented. We had an opportunity to collab with them, and we talked about our needs for bikes, and they had some really fun things to do. And they cooked up this really cool design that you see behind you, which is a custom 14-hook bike rack that weighs a lot, like a whole lot. Yeah, ask Nathan. Shout out to Nathan and the tie-dye and Mark and the super cool mustache. They've been holding it down. They've been here since pretty much day one. So that's been cool too. I really don't know I don't have too much to say other than thank you for being here. And thanks for this opportunity to allow us to contribute to this community that we're so happy to be a part of. Riding bikes is awesome, and it's the only freedom that I've ever had that I feel like I can take anywhere. I try to ride my bike as much as I possibly can, and the days that I don't feel the same. So definitely once I get home and I walk my dog and I put everybody to bed, I'm jumping on my bike, I'm doing a couple laps around the neighborhood to at least get something flowing through my legs. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I just wanted to say thank y'all for being here. We got a lot of wonderful things on the boards. We got beer, wine, cider, kombucha, teas. We roast all of our coffee in-house. We've been here since 2017 and we don't really see ourselves going anywhere else. So really appreciate the support. If you're ever in the area, come and see us. We also have 2 other locations. One of them is really awesome and it's located next to Crux Climbing Gym. Grace is the big boss lady over there. She runs that. And then we also have a location, our Highland location is located next to Crux Central, which is on Dillard Circle, right across the street from ACC Highland, right off of Airport in Denson. Shout out to Bike Austin for getting some really awesome bike lanes, protected bike lanes on Denson, which connects Lamar to Airport and makes it way more fun. And then we have a tiny little shop off of Metric, right inside of Tap Brewing, right inside of Fairweather, right next to Tap Brewing, literally 400 yards down the street from the new Q2 Stadium. So if you find yourself in North Austin, please come up to our Metric location. If you're in Central Austin, stop by the Highland location. If you're here, just keep drinking and doing your thing. After this, we're going to take a brief 10-minute intermission. And then after that, we are going to be introduced into a short film. So again, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And thanks for the support.
film during tonight's festivities, and so we had to kind of think about it for a little while. But then this film that I've seen before came across my feed again, and so I was like, oh, this has to be it. So this film is about kind of the history of group rides in Austin, starting from the Critical Mass. Around 2003 is when they finished filming it. And so we're just going to show a few of the first minutes of it, and you can watch the rest of it on YouTube at your leisure, and it'll be posted later as a link to the Bike Story Night socials. So Eric, if you can get it going.
Dear editor, there are just too many cars now. Too many people driving too many cars. But there's a much ignored option. We could get rid of all or most of the private cars in Austin, run rapid transit all over town, and build any new growth in the disused parking. If we can basically rid our city of private cars, many of our problems will vanish. Let's plan cars out of Austin by 2020. If we don't do this, Austin in 2020 might be a place where no one will want to live.
Everybody, but they don't think it's that. They don't realize that it's because they live in a suburb, because everybody they know lives in a suburb.
I know people who never leave their house that they don't get in their car. And that's really damaging. It's wasteful.
I think those people need to get on their bikes and drive to work.
Oh no, I don't do bikes.
I haven't ridden a bike in so long, I don't think I know how to anymore.
Who's going to bike? I'm 50. I'm not going to ride a bike.
Austin's had a bike patrol now for 20 years. They still don't expect to see police on bikes. We're able to catch up with or sneak up on more stuff.
I have had unpleasant experiences with cops. The simple fact is I fear them more than I believe they're out there to protect me. And I think there's something wrong with that.
I never really thought of bike riding as political, but driving by some of the cars, you know, I guess it's my very first class.
It does foster a bad history.
Showing cars, there's a lot of us that can't just kill us.
There's a movement started around in other parts of the world, in Europe and in San Francisco, that became known as the critical mass movement.
About the same time that critical mass got really rolling in San Francisco, the idea came to Austin. A critical mass ride is often described as a coincidence of bicycle commuters deciding all to commute over the same route, which is not established in advance, at the same time. And this coincidence happens in Austin on the last Friday of each month at about 5 o'clock of the West Mall of the University of Texas. From there, it's unpredictable as to which direction it goes, how long it goes, how many will show up to do this, but it's a bike ride.
Smack dab in the middle of a situation overlooked by fools. Tables turned, lessons learned, you got burned for playing by the rules. Time's lost, that's lost, so brother, you got shit on in the end.
politician who thought critical mass was a bad thing and was turning the greater community against cycling, and then the critical mass people that thought the other people had sold out.
They can bring attention and awareness in their own way to what they're doing. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I would just have a different way of doing it.
The idea of critical mass is good. The idea of sort of demonstrating that bicycles have a place on the road is an important thing. I think in practice, it's problematic because they mostly piss off motorists.
There's been a big debate in critical mass between those who want to mess with traffic and those who want to be more nonviolent about it.
You are participating in something which is really pretty wacko on the traffic landscape.
Barry Goldwater says something like, extremism in the cause of liberty is worthwhile. Confrontational extremism is not always the best way to resolve problems.
For all the pros and cons that you can say about it, it's probably the first thing that made me realize that there actually was a bicycle community.
Smack dab in the middle of the situation.
I like that critical mass is confrontational. I like that. I like that they make motorists angry.
Wherever critical mass has been deployed, it has not only failed, but it's set back the political clock of change for cycling.
I think critical mass is a beautiful thing, just like communism is a beautiful thing. It would work great. The problem, humans are involved.
People question Gandhi and Martin Luther King's tactics. Critical mass is just an act of civil disobedience. It's a non-violent protest.
Especially the younger ones think, oh, this is activism, we're changing things, but like, we're riding our bikes around. You don't change anything by riding your bikes around. They say, well, increasing visibility. Well, sure, but you're also pissing off thousands of motorists. But for me, the point of critical mass is to have fun. When you're riding your bike every day by yourself, and you're realizing you're taking your life in your own hands, then there's something very exhilarating and powerful and rewarding about being able to ride with 100 other people who feel the same way. It was almost an autonomous zone.
So as I was saying, you can watch the rest of it later in your own time. But it's a great film that was made by Austin Knights about two decades ago, about kind of how we had to have a political movement, I guess, in Austin to get the infrastructure that we enjoy today. So just remember, people have been working for a long time to get us to where we are now, and it's good to remember that from time to time.
Thanks, Jordan. I hope y'all noticed a few some new faces in there. Pink and yellow bike projects, which are in there. They're really yelling when I saw because I was like, Pete! It's so nice. So if you haven't been to yellow bike project, please go visit Pete. And yeah, remember how lucky we are, I guess, for being able to, bike on in all the bike infrastructure that has been built over the years. I'm sure plenty of y'all have been here for years and noticed the change. You kind of shed a little tear, like, that's why Austin, that's what I'm here for. So keep on riding your bike, keep doing the thing. And I'm going to call up the next storyteller who's going to talk about how bikes change my life. And I'm sure a lot of y'all will relate because I'm sure you have a bike story that changed your life. So welcome Susie onto the stage. Susie Bannon, everyone.
Thank you very much. Oh my God, this is terrifying.
Hi.
So yeah, my name is Susie, and this story is about how bicycles changed my life and in essence saved my life. And to get started, we need to go back to 1997 when I was a spry high schooler back in the woods, Texas, living my best life. And I drank alcohol for the first time ever. And I really liked it. And I kept liking it well through my 20s. I spent the majority, or the entirety rather, of my 20s consuming pretty much every chemical substance that people could put in front of me. I was an equal opportunity drug and alcohol user. I did not discriminate. And ultimately, my addiction to substances led me to being incarcerated in jail multiple times, and then ultimately I was sentenced to a term in prison here in Texas. It is the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, if you haven't heard about it, otherwise known as TDCJ. I do not encourage you to check it out. It's not it was not my best vacation, but it was an experience. But that's a whole nother story night. So I ended up incarcerated, and I did make parole after a year. Came home on parole, and very quickly realized that even though I am an able-bodied white femme with class privilege, life is hard with a criminal record, y'all. It is really hard to do something as simple as getting, a really simple minimum wage paying job. And so very soon after coming home, I realized that life was not going to be as smooth sailing as I had hoped. And that created a situation where my sobriety was at stake because, any addict or alcoholic, really loves inconveniences because that gives you a good reason to go ahead and get fucked up. And so at the encouragement of my sponsor, I was starting to go on what I called stupid little nature walks at a local park in Houston. And they were really boring, but they got me out of the house and they kept me from drinking. And so that was a win-win. But on one of my stupid little nature walks, I observed a group of people whooping and hollering and listening to the Notorious B.I.G. on some sort of waterproof speaker, coming in and out of the trails over by the trailhead. And I thought, damn, that shit looks fun. And I made that decision that day. I said, I am going to learn to do whatever that is. I figured out it's mountain biking. I figured out what kind of bike I should get. I ended up buying a used 26er Gary Fisher Huku Iku. It was way too small for me, but I didn't care. And I immediately fell in love with this sport. And so I immediately ended up in a community of people that just sort of took me under their wing, showed me how to ride, ultimately ended up training to race with them, raced for a couple of years, and that was my introduction to falling in love with bicycles. I did move away from racing pretty soon after starting. Competition was not my jam, a little too stressful. But that opened up the doors for me being a commuter, to me being at times fair weather road cyclist, and then later going to, on adventures like bike packing or whatever. And so that was about 10 years ago. And since then, bikes have taken me to places that I otherwise would never have been. They have introduced people to me that I otherwise never would have met. They have allowed me to be able to bridge my love for cycling with social advocacy efforts, so working with nonprofits that use bicycles as a means of social transformation. And they've really so much to my life that I otherwise would not have had without them. And in doing so, they also kept me, protected me from myself at a period of time when things were really precarious, where sobriety was very fresh and very unstable and very uncertain. And so bikes are fun. They are awesome means of transportation. They're green. They're good for the environment. We want more of that. But they're utilities of transformation. They can change people at the individual level as well as at the social level. And because of that, they've given me a purpose. So that is why bikes have saved my life.
Thank you so much, Susie. That was really awesome. Wow, so many great catchphrases tonight. Once again, I want to just remind you about Bike Story Night. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube as you are watching. We are live. This live stream is now. You can wave at your friends. I'm sure Eric has a camera faced at y'all right now. So yes, please say hello to your friends. You can watch it later. Tell your friends if they missed it. Again, follow us on all the socials. Y'all having a good time? Is this great? Let's race. What's that? Yeah. Cheers. Cheers. Cheers to Bike Story Night. Cheers to all y'all for coming out here, supporting this wonderful creative. No. I don't have a drink. I'm sorry, but y'all can cheers. Cheers. Cheers to Eric. Yes. Meanwhile, also, cheers to Eric again, who's over here killing it at this live stream video game. Thank you, Eric. He's going to tell a story next time, right, Eric?
Yeah. I got you.
Yeah, bear with us. It's a little bit dark up here, and I hope that you all in the back can hear okay. Thank you all again for coming. We have one more storyteller, and then we can hang out, mix and mingle for a little bit before Spokesman closes at 10. So yeah, I think you can hang out outside possibly if you want to for a little bit. But just a reminder, maybe get a drink if you haven't gotten one, or a snack, whatever you need to do. Also, P.S. Little Nona's Pizza, vegan pizza is out there. If anyone didn't get some today, I highly recommend you come back and get some because it's some of the best pizza I've ever had, and I'm not even vegan. Thank you all again for coming out. So I'll probably come out here and say more bike talk or wrap it up, but Abby, are you ready? Abby, I'm so excited to hear your story. Fresh out of a race?
Yeah.
Sort of? A couple weeks?
I call it, all races are rides.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm so excited. Thank you.
Yes.
Awesome. Hi, y'all. My name is Abby. I am queer and non-binary. My pronouns are they, them. That is important for the rest of this story. Listening to all these stories, it's really interesting. Everybody's story starts with, everybody's story with bikes seems to start really far back. We're talking, 10 years, 20 years. And actually, my story starts 12 and a half months ago. I wrote a book, and that has nothing to do with bikes. That's not really the important part of the story. But I finished writing a book on June 1st, and my publisher gave me the money that they owed me for finishing the book. And I thought to myself, what am I going to do with this? I think I want to get a bike. I'd ridden bikes when I was a kid. I'd had some experience with it, in high school, whatever. And I was like, yeah, I want to get into this. Suddenly there is a large hole in my life, which used to be filled with writing. And I need something to fill that time. And I've got a little bit of money to spend. And I was like, okay, well, what kind of bike do I want? Started researching, and I found out about gravel riding, which, for those of you who don't know, which I'm sure is not very many of you, gravel riding is like the bastard child of road riding and mountain biking. It's not as extreme or as cool as mountain biking, and it's not as fast as road riding. And I was like, shit, that's perfect for me. I'm neither cool nor fast, so it fit. But while I was researching, I discovered this kind of, it's like an experience at this point, this race called Unbound Gravel in the Flint Hills of Kansas. I grew up in Kansas, and when I found out about this race, I was like, that is awesome. Like, there was this part of me that was really drawn to it because it was happening on these roads and this like part of the country that I had spent so much of my life driving through. Driving to see family, back and forth, traveling. Like, I knew the Flint Hills of Kansas, and I was like, man, that looks amazing. The 200-mile gravel race over some of the most crazy terrain that you've ever seen on gravel roads. And I was like, I want to do that. And so I got this gravel bike, and I went from never having ridden more than 10 miles at one time to averaging about 125 miles a week in a matter of about a month and a half. I like to go hard with basically everything. My friends and fiance are laughing right now because they know. So I was all in to do this race. And as I was kind of new to cycling and new to this community, and also having a hard time getting into it because it was the pandemic and no group rides were happening, I was just kind of riding on my own, and I had this thought that, what if I was like the first non-binary person to ride on bound gravel? And I was like, that would be so cool. But then I was like, you know what, that's ridiculous. I'm sure there are plenty of other non-binary people who have ridden, and I just haven't met them yet because I haven't met anyone who cycles, because there's no place to meet them. No group rides are happening. I'm just out here, 30 miles outside of Lockhart, riding on a gravel road by myself with some cows. But the thought had crossed my mind, and I was like, oh, okay, but I put it out pretty quickly. Flash forward a few months, I get in on the lottery to ride Unbound Gravel. I mightily adjust my expectations. I do not sign up for the 200-mile race. I sign up for the 100-mile race because turns out riding a bike 100 miles is very, very hard. And so I was definitely not prepared to ride 200 miles. So on the registration, like you would assume, I clicked the only option that comes close to applying to me when registering for a bike race, and I clicked the women's section, even though I knew that that didn't align with who I was. But whatever. I'm not going to let this checkbox wig me out or keep me from this amazing experience. A few months later, after finding out that I'd gotten in, Unbound actually changed their trans inclusion policy. So allowing for trans and non-binary riders to ride in a category that worked for them. They had some stipulations around trans women and what they would have had to have gone through in order to ride in the women's category, which, while a step in the right direction, is a tiny bit frustrating, but we're going to take every win we can get, seeing as cycling has the largest gender gap of any of the co-ed sports that happen in the Olympics, which is a statistic that came out, and I believe it, being around. But in making this new trans inclusion policy, they also created a non-binary category, which I was super stoked about. I was like, hell yeah, that's me. I get to race in a category that actually reflects who I am. And so I tried to change my registration online because they said I could, but it turns out it was very difficult. I ended up emailing them and saying, hey, can you change my registration for me? Because I can't figure it out. I thought I was fairly tech savvy, but this was not my day. So they switched over my registration. And I was thrilled, and I wanted to use the opportunity to get in touch with more non-binary riders. And I tried connecting to people through Instagram and other, really it was just Instagram, because how else do you connect with people you don't know? And I was just hearing crickets. Like nobody else. I was like, has anybody else signed up for this? I'm like, no. Like, all right, I must not be connected to the right people. The algorithm wasn't helping me. But on the way up to Kansas, we're driving the 10, 11 hours to Emporia, Kansas. I realized that there's a function where you can actually see all the people who are racing. And it will break everything down by category, like, men's 60 plus or whatever it was. And if you go to the race and you scroll all the way down to the very bottom below the open tandem category, there was my category, non-binary. And there was one rider. And it was me. And then I was like, well, maybe that's just for the 100-mile. Like not, like the big race is the 200-mile. That's the big deal. None. Maybe the 350, like the crazy person race. None. Well, maybe the smaller race, the 50-mile, or the family 25-mile. None. So, literally 2-3 hours outside of Emporia, Kansas, I realized that I am the only registered non-binary participant in a race of nearly 3,000 people. Which, at first, I was like, cool, this means I'm gonna win my category. And then my loving fiance immediately reminded me, it means I'm also gonna be last in my category. Okay, touche. But nonetheless, I was really excited. In my preparation for this race, I had gotten really okay with the fact that I might not finish. 100 miles on gravel is a really hard thing. The longest race that I'd ever done up until that point was 62. So it's a pretty big jump in both length and intensity. And so I'd spent a lot of time thinking, it's gonna be okay if I don't finish. That perspective shifted for me on that car ride, when I realized that I was gonna be the only one out there. It made the race feel a little bit more significant, even if my name and my category were all the way down at the bottom of the list. I knew when I got up to the start line in Emporia that I had to finish. It felt too important to let an opportunity like this slip by. And so I got up there and I got to the start line and I started riding. And with all the excitement, I started riding a little too fast. Because that's what you do at the start of the race, you're just kind of stoked. And to be fair, the first 30-ish miles were actually pretty chill. Not a whole lot of elevation. The roads were really like fast rolling, and it was beautiful, and I was having a blast. And then things started to get really, really hard. Terrible rocky terrain, huge, I mean, I say huge to me, pitchy climbs, like really steep rolling hills that just kind of didn't stop. Not to mention it was super hot and the wind was blowing. We had a headwind for like most of the race. And I felt really fortunate for all of the people that I met while I was riding. One of whom was named Joanna. She was from New York, I believe. Had a great bar tape. We talked about our bikes for a little while. But one of the things she said to me was like, you just have to make it to the checkpoint for the time. And then you can totally coast the rest of the way. Doesn't matter how fast you go. We have all night to finish. The cutoff time was like 3 a.m. And I was like, okay, that allowed me to relax a little bit. So I'm out there on these gravel roads. I make it to the checkpoint in plenty of time. Actually, a fairly like okay time, like in my mind. I'm like, okay, like I'm doing it. But things started to get really rough. And there was at one point, I rolled around a corner and there was a big farmhouse that was positioned in such a manner that it was actually creating a massive amount of shade in their front yard. And I took a cue from several of the other riders in front of me and hopped off my bike and just laid in the grass. And as I was laying there, I had this sensation that like, I could just not get up. Like I could just stay here until my dad comes and gets me, like finds wherever I am out in the middle of nowhere, Kansas, and picks me up. Like I could just stay here. Like I'm in the shade, the clouds are kind of pretty, the breeze is nice when you don't have to ride your bike directly into it. But then I remembered that I was the only one out here. And so I got back on my bike and I started pedaling. And then I got off my bike and started walking, and I got back on my bike and started pedaling, and then I would walk, and sure enough, I was walking up all the hills and then just riding down them because that's all I could really do. But eventually, after 11 hours and 3 minutes, I made it to the finish line. Woo! Yeah. And as I like to say, I became the non-binary champion of Unbound Gravel. Very excited. The story actually gets more interesting because after that happened, I took some pictures and I posted them on Instagram, and I said that, you know what, I'm the non-binary champion of Unbound Gravel, and it seems a little ridiculous. I wasn't actually competing against anyone else, but I was competing against something a lot bigger. I was competing against a system that doesn't want to make space for me and athletes like me. And so crossing that finish line was not about me, but about making more room in this sport for everyone. I posted about that. I also made kind of a shitty comment about not getting a plaque, because everybody else who won their category got a plaque. And I was like, you know, I didn't get a plaque, and I didn't get to stand up on a podium, and et cetera, on Instagram. And then turns out, I got a message from the race director assuring me that they did in fact have a plaque for me. And I didn't actually get it because they did the awards ceremony for the 100-mile race while I was still out on course. Because fast people who usually win their categories can do 100 miles on gravel in like 6 hours, and that's insane. So she told me that if, you know, we'd already left town, she would mail it to me, and I was like, you know, we're actually in Kansas City, and we'll be coming back through in 4 years, so well, I'll just come and pick it up. I'd like to have it. That's kind of fun. And I was expecting just kind of a quick exchange, being able to, you know, just kind of hand off and like maybe snap a picture. But when we got there, I was super surprised to see that they had actually taken the time to set up the entire podium for me and presented me the award just like they would do for anyone else. And I got to have my picture taken and hold this amazing award, and it felt really special. I feel like being queer, being non-binary, being trans, it's easy to make the assumption that people aren't going to make space for who I am. People aren't going to care. That this category was really just kind of a throwaway thing that they had to do for political reasons, and, you know, to not catch shit later on down the road, like, okay. But it turns out that these race promoters actually cared. And that was a really, really cool experience. And from that experience, a lot of other people in the cycling industry, or at least in the gravel industry, have started to take note. And I was featured in Velo News shortly after. I was given the opportunity to be on a really awesome podcast by Pacey McKelvin, who's a really popular gravel writer. And maybe the best part of this whole thing is that I've had events reaching out to me asking how we can make events more inclusive. Yeah. And so I'm super excited. I've actually been working and consulting with these events on how to make more space for people in this sport that we love so much. Knowing that the competition isn't necessarily about beating the person next to you, but simply always striving to be the best version of yourself. And you can do that on a bike. We've heard stories of how cycling isn't just about training your body, but how it's about discovering yourself and becoming more of who you are, learning confidence and resilience. And everyone deserves the opportunity to do that. And so I'm really happy that my story can be a catalyst for that. And so thank you so much for letting me share my story. Thank you so much to all the other storytellers and to Spokesman for having us out. My name's Abby, and thank you for listening.
That was amazing. We're wrapping up now. Wrapping up. That was our final story. It was a great one. I wanted to take a minute to see if anyone had any questions, and I wanted to just remind you that I'm sure all of you here are bike enthusiasts, whether you have a bike or think about getting a bike. You know, you all deserve to ride bikes. Bikes are freaking amazing. Get your friends and ride bikes. It's the shit, as they say. Get a bunch of your friends together. You can also ride by yourself. Start, you know, looking for a bike if you don't have a bike. I can't encourage you more. There's a freaking bike ride or 5 every single day of the week, at least. I organize a couple of bike rides, so reach out to me if you want to get together. I can talk to you all about them and other bikes that you can join, what bike ride might be great for you. But yeah, I want to thank you all again for coming. I feel so privileged to be in this space with all of y'all. The vibe has been super amazing. Spokesman has been super amazing. I really couldn't have done this without all of y'all, without all of your support, and our volunteers and friends for helping us here. So please, you know, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, all of the things. Our Instagram has our link tree that has everything on there, and it really helps that you follow and stay connected, because then we can make the next Bike Story Night in a couple of months even bigger and better, and the next even bigger and better than that one, and hopefully more storytellers. You can always reach out on our email as well, which is in our link tree, or you know, our Instagram. But I wanted to also see if anyone had any questions as well for any of the storytellers. Yes?
For the movie, where can we find the rest of that movie? I think it was Jordan's.
Yeah, that's on YouTube. Jordan, what is it called again?
Bike Like You Mean It.
Bike Like You Mean It. Definitely go watch the rest of it. It's a super fun film. Yes, hopefully by 2020, we will all be riding bikes. Everyone will own a bike. Majority of Austin will be biking. It'll be a great place to live. That was a great question. Anyone else? Just curious, does everyone here have a bike? Yeah! Hell yes for bike. Does anyone here have 2 bikes? 3 bikes. 6 bikes. 20 bikes.
Go harder, go on.
Well then, I am sure any of y'all probably have a story, so I encourage you to start thinking about it, and perhaps next time be one of our storytellers. But yes, thank you again for coming. Really, really thank you. Appreciate you. We couldn't have this amazing event without all of y'all showing up and supporting this community, lovely Spokesman, and Bike Story Night. Am I forgetting anything? I think we good? We good? I think we have a few more minutes to mix and mingle and have some drinks. What time is it?
9:41.
It's 9:41. Oh my gosh, we have 15 minutes to have a drink and a snack and chit chat. The next Bike Story Night is hopefully soon. We actually don't have a date yet. So please reach out to us with questions. Please share the Instagram and the Facebook page, because the more interest, the more ability we are to have another event. So hopefully soon, hopefully in a couple of months, there might even be some like mini pop-up intimate stories on our page and such like that. There'll definitely be some like fillers in there. Don't worry, I won't leave y'all hanging. We've got so many bike stories to tell. But thank you again to all of the storytellers, Texas Mamma Jamma, Hector Gonzalez, Jessica, Alexander, Abby Robbins. Susie, where are you at? Susie, are you still here? Susie, you did great. I know she was super shy, or scared, nervous. It's nerve-wracking up here. So give the storytellers another round of applause. Yes, y'all did great. So great. All right. Let's hang out for a little bit. Thank you all so much.